Hello, I'm Thomas Fuller from Omny Law, and in this module we're going to be looking at performance management and capability and how to handle underperformance fairly. Now, performance issues are common, but they can easily be mishandled, especially when frustration builds with an employee who's consistently failing to meet the expectations of their role. But before looking at how to manage a capability concern, it is first important to identify what is actually meant by capability. In the eyes of the law, capability refers to the skill, aptitude, health, or any other physical or mental quality of the employee. This is important because an employee's attitude to work or their carelessness, which understandably are their own problem, are not strictly speaking capability matters, but conduct matters, which must be handled separately and differently. How to handle conduct matters is discussed further in the Handling Disciplinary Issues Fairly module. On the other hand, if we take the example of a salesperson who has been unable to meet the requirement to convert 10 leads per month for the last 3 months, even with their best efforts to convert those leads, and despite having received all of the coaching, guidance, and tools necessary to meet those expectations, they may be deemed to be incapable if they continue to fail to meet this target. It is not that this employee is unwilling to meet the target or that they do not know how to meet the target, but they are simply unable to convert those leads due to their skill or aptitude for sales. In this scenario, that would more likely be a capability matter for the employer to deal with. The other type of capability issue is medical incapability, but this is explored separately in the Managing Sickness Absence and Reasonable Adjustments module. When it comes to performance management, there are several key steps that you as a manager should follow. Firstly, you should always be clear what standards the employee will be expected to work to. Whilst for some roles this will be more obvious than others, such as telling a lorry driver not to drink alcohol before they drive, it is always best to set out the standards of behaviour or performance that the employee will be expected to meet. This may be by way of achieving a specific goal within a set deadline or setting performance targets they will be required to hit every month, which they are made aware of. It is also best practice to ensure the employee is aware of the possible consequences of not meeting certain targets. In most cases, missing a deadline will have consequences, but it is only fair that the employee understands what those consequences may be, particularly if the deadline is fixed and will result in a more severe consequence than a deadline which is movable, which may have less severe consequences if missed. If a problem with an employee's performance does arise, early intervention is key. Leaving an employee to underperform for several months will only worsen the problem in the long run, whereas dealing with the issues quickly mean you are more likely to rectify the behaviour and stop it before it becomes a repeated problem. Whilst employees are responsible for their own actions, an employee will nevertheless be required to support the employee in order for them to fulfil their duties to the standards expected of them by the employer. This offer of support may take the form of training on key elements of their role. It may be in the form of coaching on how to handle certain situations, or even by making adjustments to the employee's targets. Whatever the support is, the employer should show that it is doing what it can to upskill the employee to the required standard. As with all types of HR processes, the employer should keep detailed records of any conversations with the employee about their underperformance and the specific issues that have been identified. The employer should set clear standards that they are expected to achieve and, where necessary, set timelines for when those objectives should be achieved by. It may also be prudent to split the objectives down into more manageable chunks to show each step that needs to be taken to achieve the required goal. Finally, the employer should review the employee's performance at reasonable stages. This may be on a weekly, fortnightly, or monthly basis, depending on what is agreed with the employee as reasonable when taking into account the time it may take to demonstrate improvement, the number of areas they are required to improve on, and the level of support needed by the employee. Once an employer has identified the problem, intervened, offered support and reviewed the employee's progress, it may then be necessary to decide whether a more formal process needs to be initiated. Ultimately, you as the manager should only escalate the concerns once support has been given time to work, and this is why the earlier stages of a capability review are so important, because it enables you to gather the evidence you may need to justify more formal action later on. When it comes to performance management, I often see the same mistakes being made, with the first mistake being to let the issues drift. Now, as we discussed slightly earlier, earlier intervention is key to ensuring the employee's bad behaviour does not become the standard of behaviour, as it makes it more difficult to unwind and resolve if it's not addressed. The second are managers jumping straight into issuing warnings. A manager should seek to understand the cause of the underperformance first, because this may uncover perfectly legitimate reasons why the employee is not meeting expectations. So issuing a warning without any such investigation is likely to result in legal risks. Finally, it is common for managers to ignore or disregard health factors that may be impacting on the employee's performance. Whilst an employer will no doubt expect a certain level of output from their employees, failing to acknowledge how one's health or well-being may be impacting their ability to meet those expectations is often overlooked. It is therefore important to seek advice before taking any formal action in circumstances where the employee's performance is not improving despite any support and period of review by the employer, or where the employee's health may be a contributing factor to their underperformance. Thank you very much for watching, and you can find further guidance and resources on the Breathe Growth Academy.